Hello and welcome to Fiction Fans, a podcast where we read books and other words too. I'm Lily.
And I'm Sarah, and I am so pleased that today we have Ciel Pierlot with us to talk about Bluebird.
Hello, I'm Ciel.
Hi there.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Before we jump into book talk, I was just wondering if there's something great that happened this week for anybody.
Well, I finally finished a really stupid and long and boring homework assignment, and that's done. And I don't have to think about it anymore. And honestly, that's pretty great. I love not having to do homework anymor.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Always exciting.
Like, all right, thank God that's done. We're out. Bye.
Hit send, out of my head. Delete it.
Exactly.
Yep.
Gone forever.
Mine is similar. I purchased vegan sausages a couple of weeks ago because they were on sale and I'm a sheep. But they were terrible.
Oh no.
Like the worst thing I've ever tasted. So I finally figured out that if I drown them in horseradish, I can consume them, and I finished them today. So I don't have that albatross in my fridge anymore.
Horseradish makes everything better.
Very true.
It's true.
My good thing was that I went to Gallifrey 1, which is the Doctor Who convention in LA, and Bluebird was perfect poolside reading at Galley. So,
Oh, hell yeah.
yes. So that was a lot of fun.
Sounds pretty awesome.
I'm so jealous. Okay, moving on.
Next year you'll be back with me.
Well, what is everyone drinking tonight?
I am drinking cider, Golden State.
Same, although I'm drinking Shilling, my locals.
I'm just drinking tea. I've got myself a nice hot cup of hojicha, so
Ooh.
I like it.
Sounds delicious.
It's very good. It's one of my favorite comfort teas.
Hojicha is wonderful.
So good.
Yeah.
It's been really cold up here, or at least for me. So warm tea sounds really nice.
Yeah, it's been pretty cold for me too.
Well, since this is a book podcast, has anyone read anything great lately?
I've actually been rereading a much older book, but I loved it when I was a kid. And I still have my incredibly battered billion-year-old copy of it. It's called The True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle. And oh my gosh, it's about this cultured young lady who's sailing to America, and she's sailing completely alone on a ship surrounded by just the sailors and the captain and everything. And I don't want to spoil anything. It's a really fucking old book, but if you haven't read it, I don't want to spoil anything, but it's really good. And it was definitely the kind of spunky young female protagonist that I loved in middle school. So
I don't think I'm familiar with it, but it sounds great.
It's really good. I loved it when I was a kid, and I was like, oh, I'll reread that.
There's nothing like rereading.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I haven't reread an old one in a long time. Sounds good. Sounds nice, especially when it is cold as hell.
Yeah.
Why is that nostalgia weather? I don't know.
I don't know, but it is definitely nostalgia weather.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sarah, do you have an answer? Because I don't.
I do. I read the third Murderbot book, Rogue Protocol, because Sue Bavey on Twitter is organizing an event for March called March of the Sequels, where people read sequel books. And this was a sequel book, and I thought it was also appropriate galley reading for some reason, even though the Doctor is very much a pacifist. And there are lots of guns in the Murderbot books.
So something about the name Murderbot does suggest that maybe there's a little violence, just a tiny bit.
Just a little bit.
That kind of intuition is what makes you an author. And it's not actually March yet, but don't worry, Sarah, I won't tell anybody.
This episode comes out in March.
Oh, did I just give our secret timeline away?
You did.
JK.
Don't worry, I'll probably forget about it.
Good. Our secret's safe with you. Well, we are here today to talk about Bluebird.
Lesbian gunslingers in space.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was so good. I saw that tagline. Angry Robot had sent out an email about it, and I was like, I need to read this book. I need it.
Yeah, I was really happy with that tagline that we came up with. Although apparently some people on the internet got annoyed because they're like, why does everything have to be about the character's sexuality? but people on the internet are dumb.
I'm rolling my eyes right now.
I know, right? People on the internet are so stupid.
Yes, they are. So to celebrate the release of Bluebird, I saw on Twitter, you baked a gorgeous, delicious looking 3-tiered cake, as if being a talented author and talented artist is not enough. But I was wondering, what's your favorite dessert to make and why?
Oh, my favorite dessert to make. Okay, so you know those cookies that you get from the store that are like soft cake cookies and they're frosted and they taste like
best
chemicals?
cookie ever. Yes.
They're so good. They taste so fake. You bite into one and you're like, this is made of chemicals. They're disgusting. I ate the whole box. What? So imagine that kind of cookie construction of like a cakey cookie base with like thick frosting. But imagine it chocolate and really good. And
Holy
this
shit.
is actually a recipe that my mom got from like her childhood friend's grandma or something. So it's a recipe where you actually have to use a wooden spoon and a mixing bowl because if you try to use a stand mixer, it will not work.
Oh my gosh.
I am so sold.
They're so good. I made them once and I like gave, I started doing the thing where you have too many cookies, so you got to give them away to friends. And I gave them away to a friend who was like, I don't know, I don't really like chocolate. And I was like, okay, well, you don't have to like them, I'm trying to get rid of them. And then like, I think the next day she was like, oh my God, these are so good. I don't even like chocolate. What the hell?
A convert.
Exactly.
The one true cookie.
Exactly.
That sounds amazing. Now I want them. I shouldn't have asked this question. This was a dangerous question.
I'm so sorry. I can tell you about other delicious desserts I've made if that would help.
It's not going to help. Well, like Sarah mentioned, you are not only an author, but also an artist. And I was wondering if you found that being able to visualize your characters through art has affected the way you describe them on the page or the way your readers are able to interact with your work.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, obviously, I can't say for certain how readers are interacting with my work because, that's subjective and different between, that's, you know what I mean? It's different between everybody, but it definitely impacts how I write. Like, I think there's an extent to it, when you're visualizing a scene, it's like, oh, what is this character doing? How are they doing it? And I think being an artist, there's an extent to which I see it much more cinematically. Like, it's like, oh, what's this character doing? But what would the camera angle be? What, like, special effects would there be? Would there be any dramatic lighting added to it? And I try to write around that image.
I've been scrolling through your art page on your website.
The art page on my website is super old and I haven't updated in a really long time. I keep meaning to. I'm so sorry.
No, it's good. I mean,
your art, you're like I said, you're incredibly talented. It's no fair.
There's more recent stuff on my Twitter, I think, actually.
Okay, well, no one go to her website.
Yeah, go to my Twitter. You'll see Bluebird art and also Final Fantasy fan art, classic stuff.
Actually, speaking of fan art,
yes,
and your website, which I was stalking you on, can you tell?
That's fine. Yeah, I'm sorry it hasn't been updated in a while.
No, it's fine. But I did notice that you mentioned that you have dabbled in fan fiction,
yes.
And we are huge supporters of fan fiction on this podcast.
Yes.
So I was wondering if you had a favorite title, property of fan fiction. Fandom, I guess is the word.
Oh, that's so difficult. Are we talking about one that I've written for or one that I've read for? Because there's going to be different answers.
I feel like both.
Yeah, I'd like both answers now. I'm curious.
Okay, well, the one that I've written the most for is a secret, and I'm not going to tell you.
Fair.
The one that I've read the most for, or like the one that I'm most fond of reading, actually, it is the best fan fiction ever, is a Lord of the Rings fan fiction called Sansuk, and I actually dedicated Bluebird to the author of that fan fiction. So safe to say that is probably my absolute favorite fan fiction ever. Classic Lord of the Rings. Can't go wrong.
That's awesome.
I have to go check that out now.
It's the best fan fiction ever. Oh my God, it's incredible. Like, okay, so imagine Lord of the Rings, but then you're like, oh,
I kind of wish they would go more into, I wish like the movies went more into the lore of that's behind in the Silmarillion, and I wish it was gayer, and I wish that the dwarves were actually shown on screen in the Lord of the Rings more often than just Gimli and like, mentions that stuff's happening. And then it's also like, hey, would you like a giant cast of original characters? You know nothing about them, but you will, and you will cry over them. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Also, it's gay as hell, and there's so many queer relationships. It's just spectacular.
See, I feel like every time I dip my toe into the Lord of the Rings fanfiction world, I just find a bunch of like middle school girl self-inserts. I fell through a rift and now I'm in Middle Earth.
But this is why you need recommendations.
It's
from
true,
experts.
yeah.
Okay, so the only thing you have to do to get yourself out of that is go to AO3 and pick a queer pairing you like. Once there's like one queer pairing in the fic, the whole rest of the fic is so much queerer. Like my personal favorite is Gimli and Legolas. Although I'm going to be honest, I don't need to ship Gimli and Legolas. They ship themselves. They build themselves a boat and sail into the undying lands in the West. I don't need to ship them. They shipped themselves, quite literally.
That's true. I feel that way. I read quite a bit of Hobbit fan fiction, which there's a ton
Classic.
of now that there's movies for it. But that Bilbo Thorin, it's not my fault.
Yup. 10 out of 10. Completely agree with you.
Okay, before we get too distracted talking about
sorry.
fanfic, we could talk about this for another 2 hours. We'll have to have you back to just do a fan fiction only episode.
Oh, I'm always down for that. It definitely doesn't take up way too much of my time.
I mean, same.
Let's not talk about how many open AO3 tabs there are on my phone. Let's not go into that.
Again, same.
I think my worst was in the 30s.
I think mine's higher than 30 because I started like, that thing you do where you enter a new fandom and you just start going through like every single fic ever and you just keep opening more and more fic and new tabs.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of that.
And then the rabbit hole of what else has this person written?
Yep.
What has this person bookmarked?
Oh, absolutely. It's like an entire chain. It's like a multi-level marketing scheme of fan fiction.
Okay, now all we need is 2 listeners of this podcast to start reading fan fiction, and they get 2 friends.
Exactly.
Changing gears just a little bit, but not entirely. Do you find that there are different challenges between writing fan fiction and writing your original work?
Oh, absolutely. So I think in general, fan fiction is very good at giving you the skills to sort of do a deep dive into a character. Like you have an existing character, and a lot of fan fiction is, character analysis, going into what makes that character work. If you have like an alternate universe fic, it's like, well, what parts of the character's lived experiences make them who they are? What parts are inherent to their personality? All that sort of thing. But what fan fiction doesn't teach you how to do is make a character. This was a little bit different for me. I came from a fandom and writing fan fiction that was very OC heavy. So learning from, the early days of my fanfic writing career, if it can be called a career.
I'm going to interrupt you and say, OC is original character.
Yes, OC is original character. Sorry about that one.
No, it's okay.
Translator's notes. But yeah, so I fortunately started writing in a fandom where having a lot of original characters was the done thing. So I had a lot of experience writing OCs, but I know that is a challenge. I think part of the other challenge is learning to set your own rules of the universe. A lot of fan fiction, the universe you're writing in has its laws, right? If you're writing for Doctor Who, there's set laws of here's how time travel works. There's those rules. And if you go into fan fiction, you're actively choosing whether to uphold or break those rules. But when you're writing something original, you're coming up with the rules. You're not picking and choosing. You're having to create something whole cloth. And that's definitely a very different skill set.
I have to say, I do love the universe that Bluebird is set in. I like that it's gritty sci-fi instead of like Star Trek sci-fi, which is how I define sci-fi worlds, where everything's like clean and shiny.
Yeah, everything's so chrome.
Yeah.
No, I really like the vibe of, like Firefly.
where it's
definitely.
like sci-fi, but it's, a lot of stuff's run down. There's, clear pockets of places that are better off, places that are worse off. So yeah, Firefly, big inspiration.
I had that in my mind, but I wasn't going to say it, so I'm glad you did.
Oh no, it's fine. It's fine.
Apocryphally, I've heard that naming things is one of the hardest parts of writing. And you not only named all of your characters in the book itself, but you also included like actual names for the chapters, which is something that I love personally. Yeah. And I was wondering if they sort of occurred naturally, or were there any that you had to like struggle to come up with?
Most of them occurred naturally. Again, when I wrote fan fiction, I would name each chapter. And I know when I started writing Bluebird, I wanted a way to distinguish the interlude chapters from each other. So I didn't want it to be, interlude 1, interlude 2, interlude 3, because I felt like that would get very dull and confusing very quickly. So I ended up deciding to just name all of them. I've found naming things both hard and also easy. Big shout out to fantasynamegenerator.com, aka one of the top 5 greatest websites ever created. Whoever's running it, I love you. You're fantastic. Keep up the good work. That I don't actually know how much I use that for Bluebird, but I definitely use that for placeholder names.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I just, have an idea of a character, but I don't know what I'm going to name them, I'll hop on to Fantasy Name Generator and just come up with something really nice, really quick, and I'll use that as a placeholder name until either I fall in love with that name or I tweak it or whatever. But yeah, with Bluebird, it wasn't too hard to name things. I kind of had a vibe in mind from the start and named things around that. So like ascetic, ossuary, pyrite, those are all, real words. Mm-hmm. They're just a little more archaic sounding. So I knew I wanted that kind of oldie vibe, sort of fancy, almost a little pretentious. And I just kind of picked real words to go
the
around
ascetics?
That.
Pretentious?
I know, right?
Never.
No way.
Talking a little bit about the interludes, one of the things that I found really compelling about this book were the two kind of like staggered plots, right? We have like the main plot and then we have these interludes. Did you write them at the same time as the chapters occur, or did you go back in and put the interludes afterwards?
No, I wrote them at the same time as the chapters occur. In general, I'm a writer that I will start sentence 1, page 1, and I will go in order to the last sentence of the last page. I'm a very chronological writer, but I wrote the interludes as I was writing everything else. I think in part because I wanted to make sure that the pacing and the timeline of the interludes matched up and worked naturally with the pacing of the rest of the book. Like I didn't want it to feel too jarring, mm-hmm. going from like the normal chapters into an interlude. I wanted to feel like it all flowed. Hopefully it does.
It never feels jarring. It feels very natural, yeah.
It interlocked so well, but I can't talk about it yet because it's not the spoiler section. So bookmark that.
Secrets for later.
But one thing I can talk about before we get to the spoilers is the banter and just the growing relationship between Rig and Ginka was so wonderful and just so delightful to read. Them needling at each other was great. Was this like the original concept of how they were going to interact, or did it sort of grow as you grew the characters?
Oh no, this was absolutely the dynamic I wanted from the start. I'm a sucker for like the friends we made along the way type of trope. Mm-hmm. So I really wanted two characters that have this dynamic where they both really need to learn something from each other. And I knew I didn't want that to be an easy learning process. I wanted there to be that fun, constant high energy interactions, I guess. So yeah, that was what I wanted from day one. I wanted that kind of, I think one of my early pitches for Bluebird was like sci-fi buddy cop movie.
But make it crime.
Exactly, but make it gay. And make it gay, make it illegal, and maybe throw too many spies in there.
No such thing as too many spies.
Thank you, yeah.
I was going to say, but not being gay, that's not the illegal part.
No, that's not the illegal part.
I could read a historical drama if I wanted to. No thanks. And I think the last question that I have, at least before we can talk about the guts of the book, is the There were definitely some more powerful themes that thread throughout this book, specifically war inherently only benefiting the rich, and also the struggle of attempting ethical consumption. And we were wondering if that was something that you consciously put in.
Well, so, I mean, obviously, my own personal political beliefs will leak into my writing no matter what kind of writing I'm doing. But I knew that I wanted a kind of strong anti-colonial tone from the start. I didn't want to write anything that felt really heavy-handed. Like some books, it feels like there is a point and the writer is shoving that point in your face constantly.
Mhm.
And I really wanted to avoid that. I really wanted to sort of let those themes develop more naturally as I went along. But no, I knew from the start I wanted it to be very anti-colonial, which, lends itself to also anti-capitalist. But yeah, it was definitely intentional from day one.
I think it was threaded through really nicely because it never, especially because of all the different characters we see, but it never felt too blunt.
I mean, it doesn't feel ham-fisted.
Yeah. It was just, this is what's happening, and how
Yeah.
could you take anything else from these events? You didn't have a chapter titled, and this is what's wrong with colonialism.
Right. No, I really wanted it to be a thing that, it's a thematic choice, I guess, that's just present.
Mhm.
It's never, the focus of everything for a chapter, or, it is never taking complete center stage. It's just there.
Mhm.
And you can't avoid it, but I didn't want it to overwhelm the plot or the characters. I wanted it to inform them.
It's sort of intrinsically connected too, since Rig, the main character, spends most of the book running from her participation in colonialism.
Yeah.
So we definitely see it from her side, I would say most of the time. But we do also get these other perspectives coming in that really flesh it out and continue the conversation without feeling, I'm going to use the word heavy-handed again. I can't think of it.
It's fine. You can keep using it.
Because that's what it's not, so it's okay. Before we move on, we kind of already covered it with Be Gay, Do Crimes in Space. But Sarah, why should you read this book?
If you want a fast-paced book with really compelling characters and soft librarian girlfriends who also kick ass, then you should read this book.
Nailed it. I don't think there's anything else to say there.
Yeah.
Go read it. To avoid spoilers for Bluebird, skip to 42:38.
So we have a note here that basically just boils down to Ginka, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. And turning that into something that is an answerable question. Is there more about Ginka? Like, do you have more of her story in your head? I, for one, really want like a Ginka and Crane prequel novel. Please and thank you.
I mean, gosh, I think with every character, there's about 5,000 pieces of meaningless details and, backstory, or what I think they'll do in the future that just never made it onto the page. Because this book's already long enough as it is. I will confess to having written fan fiction that is over 1 million words long, but I can't do that with published novels. So
That's the expanded universe.
yeah, exactly. It's like Marvel, where they have one movie and then they have to have 50 billion other movies around it.
Not to mention the miniseries.
Yes, those two.
Oh, I loved her so much. And I really need to go back and reread this book now that I know who she is, because we find out her deal so slowly. That's what I was going to say. I don't remember what brought it up.
We were talking about the interludes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The way they are so perfectly interlocked with the, current day plotline, and how we slowly learn these details about Ginka, and realizing that it even is Ginka in the interludes.
Yeah, that was a great reveal. That's that slow revelation. I loved it.
I'm so glad. I wanted it to be a really slow realization. I wanted it to be at the start, where you kind of think, kind of like Westworld, where at the start you think everything's the same timeline. And then as, stuff passes, you're like, oh no, this is different. I don't know. I wanted that slow build reveal.
And then, okay, so I'm pretty sure this is Ginka, but then what does that mean?
Right.
And going through that process. But now that I do know, I keep wanting to say where she ends up, but where my understanding of her ends up. I really need to go back to those beginning chapters of the book and reread her now that I know what's going on for her. Like, just the dichotomy of her being so stoic at the beginning, but then we find out there's this really like sweet and wounded person under that. Like, poor Ginka.
Yeah, I really, one of the things I wanted to have with the interludes was, one, I wanted to contrast her experience under Ossuary, one of the factions, with Rig's experience under Pyrite, and sort of show the different reactions they had to that. Like with Rig, you get her talking about her own past. And because obviously Ginka's not a point of view character, I knew that I needed to show her experience as well. So I chose to do it through interludes. But yeah, I wanted it to be the type of thing where by the time you get the reveal that Ginka's actually a Wind Shadow agent, you already know her enough that it doesn't feel like oh great, she's a villain now, I guess, whatever. You know, I wanted there to be that you have that emotional reason to not just be like, oh great, well, forget about her then, I guess she's evil.
Oh, you had us hooked, don't worry.
Oh, excellent.
Absolutely.
I was so invested in her. And I was so glad we got this sweet romance between Rig and June. And I was just so happy, just for myself, that Ginka got to have that as well. But it was such a different journey, right? Because Rig and June are so solid from the beginning. And of course they have their own journey, but they're always on each other's side. And that's not exactly what I'm trying to say. They come from a much more stable place despite dealing with their issues. Whereas Crane and Ginka have to find each other emotionally. I guess they already knew each other.
They're both deeply unhinged people in their own different ways. And June is sane. June is sane. She has a stable job, and she's mostly completely mentally all there, except she's sort of a mad scientist. But apart from that.
But she's a mad scientist I can get behind.
Yeah.
Not a mad scientist creating murder weapons.
She and Rig share a brain cell, and June has it a solid 95% of the time.
I love June a lot.
Oh, part of me was like, am I going to find out something terrible about June? Because I don't know if I could handle that.
Yeah, a friend of mine was reading through it recently, and she was like, is June going to betray Rig? Is June going to sell Rig out to Ascetic? What's going to happen? Is June going to be evil? Please don't make June be evil. And I was like, no, I promise it's going to be fine.
That was something that I appreciated, is that everyone has a happy ever after, or a happy for now. And
yeah,
like I liked that, especially because that kind of contrasts with some of the grittier elements of the book.
Yeah, I think part of it is, one, I'm really kind of personally tired of a lot of grimdark fiction, you know, where it's just really gritty and sad and then everybody dies at the end. I've always liked the type of media where there's a struggle and there's dark points, and sometimes it's really dark and you're like, oh, there's no way anyone's going to get out of this alive. There's no way this is going to be happy. But somehow there is that hope and they pull through. And, you know, maybe, you know, like, oh, well, Rig's safe for now. Maybe something will happen in the future. But right now, as it is, she's happy. And there is that happy ending. I wanted to keep that there. Also, I have been personally completely done with like lesbian relationships where there's like, ooh, cat fighting. Look, the girls are fighting again. And I was like, no, these two lesbians started in a happy, stable relationship. They're going to be in a happy, stable relationship, and they will end in a happy, stable relationship. There will be conflict, sure, but there will be no cat fights, and they will not break up.
And I love reading about relationships or seeing relationships depicted that the relationship is not in jeopardy. They can have issues and address those issues and deal with them, but it's not the state of their relationship itself that is under question. It's just so refreshing and so much more realistic, right? It's not either the relationship is perfect or it's terrible. Like, it can be good and still go through stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, with June and Rig, the struggle between the two of them isn't is their relationship going to last, but it's how will their relationship last in the sense of what form will it take?
Mm-hmm.
How will it continue? It will continue, but how? But I never wanted there to ever be the question of them breaking up. I always wanted it to be they will be together, but the details of that are still up in the air. I mean, they're not at the end, but like, you know.
Yeah, that's the journey.
Book, yeah.
That's their journey.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a little bit lower stakes than Ginka and Crane's journey.
Yes.
Which is the other one even still alive? And other traumatic things like that.
Oh, absolutely. No, but I definitely wanted there to be that, like, June is kind of a stable core, both for Rig and in the book, you know? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want absolutely everybody to be in mortal peril, constantly under threat of, you know, dying and losing your loved ones forever and ever and ever. I wanted there to be one character who's mostly okay. Mostly.
Oh, but because you set her up as being this safe haven when
absolutely.
When she goes under threat, it is just that much more anxious, heart-wrenching.
Yeah, no, I knew as soon as I was writing in the beginning where I was like, oh, you know, libraries are, you know, highly respected, both social and also religious institutions. Nobody goes there that doesn't have permission. As soon as I started writing that, I was like, oh no, someone's gotta violate that. Somebody's gotta break in. It's like June's gotta be in danger at some point. It's gotta happen.
It can't be too perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of, as much as we were talking about the incredibly optimistic ending of this book, there was still one sort of little hitch, which I think made the rest of it hit that much better, which is that Rig spends the entire book trying to save her sister. And then by the time she finally saves her, her sister is so mad.
Yeah.
Which makes so much sense because that was really shitty.
No, I really wanted Rig and Dara's relationship to be really realistic. I feel like there's a lot of, you know, oh, sibling bonds together forever. And I was like, no, they're very fundamentally different people. And so much of the book is about, like, you know, found family as opposed to blood trumps all. And I wanted to make sure that what Rig gets at the end of the book isn't that, you know, perfect sibling relationship that she never actually had. It's something better. And I wanted to show kind of how Dara ends up kind of where Rig started like 3 years ago, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. The way that comes full circle with her then departing on the same ship that had taken Rig off of the planet originally. The parallels in this book are so striking, you know, with Dara and Rig and Ginka, and I mean, even Rig and Traxie, honestly. Just all of the different comparisons that we get really highlight their differences, but also bring out their similarities in such a really nice way.
Yeah, that was always my goal. I really like a lot of character-focused media, and I knew that I really wanted a small cast. Like, I didn't want a really big cast of characters. I wanted a small, contained cast, and I wanted all of them to have some kind of narrative foil to one another. Like, I wanted them all to bounce off each other in interesting ways.
It sounds like in the process of writing this, you had a really clear idea of where you were going with the entire step through.
Oh, I'm so glad it sounds like that.
Okay, so maybe not then.
No, originally the last, I don't know, half of the book was completely different. It went through a number of, well, it went through one major structural rewrite before I got my agent. But my agent was the one who told me to do the structural. It's complicated. Anyway, yeah. I did this one really big structural rewrite that basically resulted in me almost completely rewriting the last half of the book. It turned out a lot better. I'm much happier with, you know, the published version than I was with the earlier version. But yeah, it was always ending in that similar happy ending place. But originally it was a lot more complicated and convoluted and nah.
Are there any like plot points that you can think of that have changed dramatically, or was it more just narrative structure stuff?
Oh no, I mean it was the plot. Like the plot changed massively. I think the only thing that stayed the same
was, okay, two things stayed the same. One, Janice still goes to threaten June. That was the only thing that stayed the same. But in the original version, that's when he dies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I just didn't like that. It was too soon. And then the second thing that stayed the same was Crane showing up on Rig's ship. But originally that was just because like they entered ossuary space and it was like, all right, need to be stopped and inspected and procedure. But I was like, wait, it makes no sense that he'd be there. That's just way too convenient. It doesn't work. So there was a lot of stuff in the original that was just bad timing, bad character arcs, unsatisfying resolution to Janice's character arc in particular. I don't know if he really has a character arc. His character arc is just, varying degrees of fucking with people.
Actually, that's the character I want to see a prequel or side story for. Because, like, what the hell was that guy thinking this whole time?
Well, that was the one thing I knew I didn't want to answer. I didn't want to answer, like, why Janice got kicked out. I didn't want to answer the question of, like, what was his experience with ossuary. I didn't want to answer, his dynamic with, any interactions he would have had with Crane in the past, because Crane mentions that like he worked with him. And I also didn't want to mention what Janice's dynamic with Umbra is, because it's clear that they have a weird working relationship.
At some point, someone mentions oh no, that was what Umbra has on the king. Does he have blackmail or something?
Oh, yeah. So I wanted to keep who Janice was, and I wanted to keep all that really secret. I don't think you need to know to understand who he is. And I felt like if I tried to explain, like, oh yeah, here's exactly what he did in his past, it would just kind of feel forced,
I just want it.
Right?
You don't have to give it to me, but I want it.
Oh, honestly.
This means you have to start writing fan fiction for it, Lily.
Right? I don't actually know for sure what Janice did. I have my own personal theories about what he might have done, but I don't think that even in my own head, there's the one canon correct theory of, what Janice did in his past.
I'm going to assume he started eating with the dessert fork instead of the salad fork.
Yeah, checks out. It's a pretty serious offense.
Yeah. I mean, in ossuary, I bet.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, that was kind of the thing that I wanted to have, is because that Ginka got kicked out for, falling in love. And so I kind of wanted there to be that question of, did Janice get kicked out because he did something similar? Like, did he try to just be a decent person and have a relationship? Or did he get kicked out for actually doing something morally horrendous that even ossuary couldn't handle? Like, I wanted there to be that he's either one extreme or the other. And you, as the reader, don't know. Rig doesn't know. Ginka doesn't know. Like, I wanted there to be that sort of ambiguity with him.
Well, it worked because it's very compelling.
All we know is he's so fucked up.
Yeah.
having that kind of unanswered question makes it a lot of fun to speculate about. And I think like that's one of the reasons why this book lingers in your head or in my head, is because there are these questions that I'm like,
Yeah, I feel like I didn't want to try to answer everything. I feel like as a writer, if you wrap up every single question the book poses, it always feels kind of too neat. So I wanted there to be stuff that we just never know, that we never find out. And that's fine, because then you have brain worms about it.
You say it's not fine, but okay.
That's when you go to Archive of Your Own and you're in too deep.
Yeah.
I mean, I would read that fan fiction.
Oh, well, I can't write it.
Yeah, that's not fan fiction.
Yeah, I'm not allowed.
I was telling Lily, she has to write it.
I can't. Ciel will judge me.
Oh, I won't judge you, but I can't read fan fiction of my own work. That's like not a thing that writers should be doing.
That's very true.
Unfortunately, yeah. I think the only fan fiction I would ever read is if my beta reader wrote fan fiction, because she would just tell me anyways. So, but apart from that, I would not read any fan fiction.
Part of me now has to go check if there is any, but I'm not going to do that.
I don't
I'm
know.
gonna
Also, don't
start
tell me. Also,
Googling.
probably not. It like just came out. That seems fast. I know fan fiction writers work faster than God, but like I don't. That seems pretty fast, even for AO3 standards.
If Bluebird was turned into a movie or a TV show, do you have any like ideal casting that you'd want for the characters?
No, actually, I know a lot of people will do fan casts or face claims. I have never done that with any character that I've written. It just never occurs to me. I think maybe part of that is, being an artist, I have my own idea of what I draw them looking like.
Mm-hmm.
And that normally doesn't involve picking an actor as a face claim or anything. So I genuinely never think about that. I figure on the, fingers crossed, eventually, lucky break that, Bluebird gets turned into a movie or TV show. I figure I would just leave that up to the casting director and trust in their expertise.
Well, I'm casting. I feel like Nathan Fillion would have to play Mosin just for that.
Oh, yeah, that's a spectacular
Wouldn't that be
one.
excellent?
That would be spectacular.
Just that like nice little connection there. It'd be good.
Oh, I would fully support that 100%. Dear Nathan Fillion, on the off chance you're listening,
he's a long time
space
listener.
Cowboy
totally.
again,
and an ex-military space cowboy. Like it's perfect.
Exactly. Yeah, no, when I was coming up with like Wind Shadow, I was like, oh man, it'd be super cool if the other factions, had their own like super cool spy military units. And I was like, oh, Pyrite has, their intelligence program. And I was like, oh man, what if they also had like a frontline unit? And that's when I came up with the idea of like the Crimson Butchers. And I was like, oh, it'd be so cool if Mosin was one of those.
Mm-hmm.
It'd just be so cool. It doesn't really add much. I mean, it adds like nice flair to his character and lets you think about, who he was. But I was like, oh, I gotta include one of those. Just gotta.
I also love that it's Pyrite intelligence. I feel like that's perfect for who that faction has been set up for. Like Ossuary has their super secret Wind Shadow. Like,
oh yeah, Ossuary basically has the most terrifying secret police on the face of the galaxy. But Pyrite is like, no. We're smart about this. That one guy working with us definitely isn't a double, triple, quadruple agent. That would never happen.
They're too straightforward to have like an actual secret police.
Oh yeah, I mean with Wind Shadow, it's like Fight Club. The first rule of Wind Shadow is you don't talk about Wind Shadow. But with Pyrite intelligence, everyone knows they're there, and they have like an actual official headquarters that you can go to. If you know where Wind Shadow's headquarters is, no, you don't. You're dead now. with Pyrite, there's probably a delivery guy who goes and drops off pizzas at Pyrite intelligence headquarters every week.
I just love that mental image, though.
Oh yeah, I mean it's the delivery guy knows more than you think.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a reading pet peeve situation you want to rant about with us?
Let's see. Okay, reading pet peeves I don't like. So I've been reading a lot of romance novels lately.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that one pet peeve I really, really don't like is the female character will suddenly get pregnant out of nowhere. Like, I mean, obviously, like...
There was a cause and effect, sure.
There is a cause and effect, but it's like, suddenly I'm pregnant. And then, even if she's never wanted kids and the guys never wanted kids, suddenly they're like, oh, yeah, parenthood's great. We're going to totally change our entire personalities and have a kid now. And happy ending. And that always I don't like that.
I'm not a fan of pregnancy storylines either.
No, I'm generally not. I always find it it can kind of ruin the immersion of a story, right? If the characters have their own goals and plot lines, and then suddenly it's all about the fact that they're having a kid and everything else is kind of forgotten about because kid.
Mm-hmm.
That's the beauty of AO3 tags.
Exactly. You just filter that stuff out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that's one of my bigger pet peeves.
Well, introducing pregnancy into a storyline is like, where's the conflict now?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I feel like that's just inviting weird melodrama, and also it's not really about the romance anymore. Yeah,
it always feels like it can be very melodramatic, and definitely, it can kind of just make the
character arcs just suddenly take a left turn and never go back to the direction they were on before. And I'm definitely that person where I'm like, no, I want to see the original character arcs go forward. Like, I don't care about this new direction.
Wait, you were halfway through a nursing degree. What happened to that?
Exactly. It's like, come on, you had goals. Where did those go? Now you're just like wanting to be parents. Come on, where was your original ambition? Not that, having kids is like you give up on your ambitions or whatever, but in novels where there is limited screen time, as it were, it very often feels like, who the characters were is just kind of given up in favor of now they're parents and gonna have a kid, and it's great.
Oh, isn't that why it's so frustrating though? Because
yeah,
you're like, no, wait, it could be both. Hold on.
Exactly. I mean, I think also for me personally, like I've never wanted kids, like known from the moment I understood that having kids was an optional thing. Because, when you're a kid, the only people are parents. Your friends' moms, right?
Yeah.
So I never wanted kids. And for so long, I mean, honestly, to this day, except now that nobody goes anywhere or talks to anybody new because there's a plague, for so long, it'd be like, oh, you'll change your mind. You'll meet the right guy. Sometimes things happen and you don't know until something happens, and I just got so tired of that I think I'm kind of, tired of seeing that as a trope in books, where it is that kind of, well, you didn't want this, but magically you've now changed your mind with the miracle of having a kid.
Yeah, the surprise factor too, right? It's not they did it on purpose.
Oh yeah, like I mean, if there's if like the book starts and one of the characters is like, my goal is I really want to have that family life. I'm like, you know what? Good for you. You know what you want. Or the main character and their partner are planning to have a kid. Like that's all fine. I don't, that's not really my jam, but it's not a trope that actively annoys me. But it always seems to come as a surprise. It's like, come on, doesn't birth control exist? Really? Maybe this is historical romance, but like, so?
But I feel like it doesn't show up in historical romance.
Really? I've seen it a lot in historical romance. Yeah.
Maybe I'm just filtering it.
Read enough historical romance to comment on how often it occurs there.
Oh gosh, I think over the summer, actually, I got so frustrated with reading historical romances that would have that, like, what a twist pregnancy, that I went on my Twitter and I was like, any historical romance fans, please recommend me books that don't have this. And I did get a bunch of good recommendations, so that was nice, but it was deeply frustrating for me for a while.
I feel like with historical romance, there's so much else going on that the authors don't fall back to that baby drama. There we go. That's something to talk about.
That's what I would hope for. I mean, so often it's like, oh, this character's estate is in ruins. They're in dire financial straits. They're engaged to someone they don't care about for, political and financial reasons. And I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. Let's go into that. Let's go into that drama. And then, I don't know, 4/5 of the way through, it'll be like, oh, no, kid, we're fine. Let's ignore that. It's like, no, come on.
Yeah. Don't take the cop out. Wrap this up. Give me a resolution.
Exactly. Yeah. Wrap it up.
Yeah. Also that.
Sorry, I saw the opportunity for a joke and I had no choice but to take it.
Sarah, did we cut you off earlier? Because I know this is a pet peeve for you as well.
I was just going to say that I think one of the things that I don't like about surprise pregnancy fic, or really any pregnancy fiction in general, is that because I have no interest in being pregnant, I really have no interest in reading about the mood swings and all of the things that come with pregnancy. And so,
oh, absolutely.
That's not necessarily related to the surprise kid trope, but it is one of the things that bothers me about it, because I'm like, I was really enjoying this character and their character arc, and now it's just pregnancy, only pregnancy.
Oh yeah, same.
As the contrarian of the podcast, I feel like the storylines are always extremely romanticized. Either pregnancy is the worst fucking thing that could ever happen to you, which I'm sure is physically the case for some people, or everything is perfect and beautiful and wonderful and everything smells like roses all the time.
I don't care about either.
Yeah, me neither. Gotta
Right,
be
and I'm
honest.
saying as someone who doesn't have that dislike, they're still not good. The storylines are still frustrating because they're too melodramatic to one side or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love drama in my romance, but I think there is a point to where you have those like extreme melodramas in one direction or the other, where it's just like this is uninteresting. It's not necessarily, I don't want to say breaking immersion, but it does become something that I just am deeply uninterested in.
I think there's a point where it's too much.
Yeah, exactly.
I think they get oversimplified. If it was like a really like thoughtful, in-depth look at how being pregnant affects a relationship, I think that'd be interesting. But
I still wouldn't want to read it.
Yeah, I still wouldn't want to read it, but I wouldn't have. Yeah, I wouldn't be interested in reading that, but I would be like, yeah, that makes sense. Like that's a totally legit thing to write. No technical critique there.
But that's not what it is, though. I find it's just like suddenly all of their problems are solved, or suddenly everything is terrible.
Yeah, that's what the trope generally seems to be.
Yeah. I just needed to get my it sucks for everyone, don't worry.
Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast to chat about Bluebird with us. Before we let you go, can you tell us a little bit about your current projects if you're working on anything? And then also, can you tell us where you can be found on the internet so that our listeners can go and find you? But not in a stalkery way, because I realized
we've all internet stalked people before. So my current project, I've written a sort of pseudo Victorian Gothic polyamorous vampire escape room.
Oh my God, I need this.
Oh, spectacular. There's a lot of sword fights and also a very nice threesome sex scene. Hopefully that will never get cut. It might.
No.
But
and then you email it to me.
Yeah, right. Just post that online, here you guys go. But I don't know if that's ever going to make it to the publishing stage. That's sort of my next project that's hopefully going to go on submission at some point in the near future. And then the other thing that I've been sort of poking with a stick is a sort of magical murder mystery set in a Tower of Evil. Yeah, very, very like Agatha Christie style of writing, but also the plot lines revolve around more magical things.
Okay, I'm here for that too. I want both of these.
It's basically a giant tower, and the basement has a door made of evil, and there's only one key to that door that if you open it, it'll unlock so much evil. And the one person who carries the key gets murdered and the key gets stolen.
Oh no. Wait, but who does it? You can't tell me. I know.
I can't tell you that.
No.
But I do know who does it. Obviously, that you generally figure that out at the start of writing a murder mystery.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a very classic whodunit magical murder mystery type of thing. Hopefully that'll become something and won't just be a thing I keep poking with a stick forever.
Both of those sound fantastic. Yes, I want them both. Please.
Yeah. I'm also poking something else with a stick, but that's probably never going to be a thing because I did that thing where you listen to the same song on repeat for 7 hours in a row straight. Mm-hmm. And I wrote 6,000 words of an outline for a 6-book series. Very sort of Wheel of Time, Final Fantasy mashup with tattoo magic.
Ooh.
And I think I ranted about it to my friend, and I kept calling it the ancient eldritch dragon monster thing. But yeah, series are hard to sell, particularly a really long series. So no real hope that'll ever get written. But that's the other thing I'm poking.
Can we ask what song inspired it?
Okay, so the trailer music for Final Fantasy XIV's Endwalker expansion, it's called Footfalls.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that song on repeat for hours on end.
It's a jam. Okay, Final Fantasy 14 has the best fucking music. It's insane. The music's so good. It slaps so hard. You'll just be like wandering around in the game and you'll go into a boss fight and like be instantly blown away by how goddamn good the soundtrack is. It's insane.
I have to admit, Final Fantasy is like the only one I haven't played. But
okay, so you gotta
played 14, but
14's the best. 14's so good. I hate to do that meme, but do you guys know the meme about Final Fantasy 14?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, the meme is, have you heard of the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV, now offering a free trial up to level 60 so you can play through the entirety of A Realm Reborn in the award-winning first expansion Heavensward with no restrictions on playtime?
I'm sold.
None of us could say that meme for a month because when Endwalker came out, there were too many people playing and they couldn't sell the game anymore and they weren't offering a trial. But now they're finally offering the free trial again so we can say the meme once more.
Love it.
Well, I'm in.
It's true.
That's today's pitch. Buy Bluebird and then sign up for Final Fantasy 14. You're welcome, Square Enix.
Ciel, you didn't say where you could be found on the internet.
Oh, yeah, I didn't. I got incredibly distracted. My bad. I can be found on my ArtStation, which is Ciel Pierlot on ArtStation. I can be found on my website, which is just cielpierlot.com. I can be found on Twitter at Ciel Pierlot. You're probably going to find more recent art and more frequent updates on Twitter. My ArtStation is a much more professional portfolio, so I won't post any doodles there, but I will post doodles on Twitter. My website is updated very infrequently because I'm super fucking lazy. You can also find me on Tumblr and Discord if you happen to know my URL on those already. If you don't, I will not tell you. But if you do know those already, I'm sure you'll know where to find me.
And you better be listening. Hey.
There's like 2 people who know my secret identity.
Thank you so much for joining us. This has been an absolute blast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Fiction Fans.
Come disagree with us. We're on Twitter and Instagram at FictionFansPod. You can also email us at fictionfanspod@gmail.com.
If you enjoyed the episode, please rate and review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and follow us wherever your podcasts live.
Thanks again for listening, and may your villains always be defeated. Bye.